Okay, so test corrections. I know that exam 2 did not go as well as exam 1 did for many folks. And so I wanted to talk about test corrections. So for those of you who are with the cohort in the fall, you know that we tended to do test corrections when exams were particularly challenging for folks. And so I wanted to sort of carry on that tradition, but modify it a little bit, okay? And so one thing that I know about test corrections is it's incredibly useful to go back and kind of make sense of what went wrong, but also think about what went right and how to kind of bridge that gap. And so for this exam, if you earned less than an 80% on exam 2, you qualify to do test correction, okay? If we think about what, like sort of the purpose behind this, like what do test corrections do for you? I think it's an opportunity to solidify your understanding. And I mean that in terms of computation, like I want us to know how to compute things, like how do I take a derivative? What is this formula? All that kind of stuff I think is incredibly important. And I really want this to be an opportunity for us to shore up on the conceptual understanding piece, okay? Meaning that we're thinking about not just how to do things, but why we're doing things and how to use that knowledge to fit the pieces together, okay? To me, I think that's what made exam 2 the most challenging for folks is I think some of us were practicing like how to do derivatives and kind of lost sight a little bit about what this all means, okay? It is also an opportunity to earn back up to 50% of lost points, okay? And so whatever your score is, let's say that you lost a total of 60 points, you could earn up to 30 points back, okay? Now, how do these work? This is where it's going to be a little bit different than the fall. Okay, so in the fall, you did your corrections, you turned them in, I looked them over, that was that. Okay. And I think given the pace of the fall courses, I think that was maybe a good way to approach that. But what I'd like to try this time is to do something where we actually have a meeting. Okay, so how do the test corrections work? You're going to sign up for a 30-minute time slot that hopefully works with your schedule. And during our meeting, so it'll be a one-on-one meeting, during that meeting, we'll discuss the concepts and procedures you learned in doing your test correction. Okay, so the purpose of that is to think about not just like, all right, I made the correction, now I could get the points, because it's not really about the points, but I made the corrections and this is how I feel like I've grown as a mathematician or as a student in this class, okay? I think moving forward, it'll be particularly important for us to have a strong foundation in those concepts. I think, I forgot who said this, but someone was describing, derivatives as slope hit puberty. And I think, yes, slope had a glow up and it is time to recognize that and think about all of the ways in which slope plays into the new content that we're learning, okay? So a little bit more about the why test corrections. I want you to know what you're doing. I don't think it feels good in any class to sit there and be like, I don't know what's going on. Okay. I have those moments when I'm taking my classes and it does not feel good. So I want that for you. I want you to feel like you know what you're doing. I want you to feel like you've got a solid foundation. I know a lot of you are planning on taking Calc 2 and maybe more than that, depending on what your major is. But either way, I want you to feel like you have a choice in that matter, that you can say, okay, I did Calc 1, I did it well, I understand it. I don't need Calc 2 for my major, so that's the end of the road for me, and that's fine. But I don't want you to be in a position where you're like, I really want to do this, but I don't know how to, move forward. And so therefore it's no longer a choice for me. It's a choice that I had made for me that I can't move forward. Okay. This is a big one right here. I want us to build our explanation skills. I know that's not something we typically do in a math class, but I think it's really important to success, particularly in Calc 1, okay? Mathematical reasoning, I really want you to understand the concepts, and you can see procedures are at the end of my list, okay? I want us to know procedures because they support everything else, but I think it's also important to consider all of the bigger goals that we have here, okay? The last bullet point, and then I'll address some of the questions in the chat, but this last bullet point, I think, is perhaps the most important thing for me as the teacher in this environment. I want you to feel like you belong in this class, that you have every right to be taking Calc 1, that you've done the hard work to get here. And even if you felt a little shaken by that exam, I want you to feel like you still belong in this learning environment and that you still can do it, and that the effort you put forth will actually pay off, okay? It might require some tweaks in that. Maybe some of the things that we've been doing up until now no longer serve us in this context. And so in that aspect, I want to encourage us to think about other ways that we can try and build some of these things up here, okay? And so hopefully this will give you a little bit of a layout in terms of what the test correction structure will be like, but also why I want to do these, try this format and see how it goes, okay? So I'm going to stop talking here. Let's take a look at the questions in the chat, and then I think we have maybe about a few more minutes for questions. Okay, yes. So I'm actually going to answer the last question first, okay? So the corrections you should do on your own time. You should still be working to do the correction, okay? The added layer, you don't actually submit the corrections to me. Rather, we talk about what went wrong, what we learned, how we move forward from that. Okay, so you're going to do the test corrections. You're going to do those for you. We're going to, you and I are going to check in about what those test corrections look like, but more in terms of being able to explain those corrections. Okay, all right. I've got a couple questions in here. Can you sign up for a meeting even if you don't qualify for the makeup points? Yes, 100% you can always sign up to meet with me. And I'm going to ask that maybe we sort of prioritize the folks who maybe need to take care of those test corrections first. And then maybe we can think about how else to have some of those meeting times. Does that make sense? I think maybe out of kindness for some folks that maybe really needed this opportunity, I want to make sure they have the time to do that first. Okay. All right, so one last thing I want to say here about this is as far as the meeting, like how you're going to sign up for a meeting, I have a few time slots sort of in mind, okay? And I'll just kind of write these here so we can take a look at this later when I post this on the Canvas. So times. I'm thinking of having a few slots later this week. So towards the end of the week, having some more time slots. And I'm also thinking about doing them the week after spring break. Okay. So there'll be some options either later this week or the week after spring break. Okay. I know for some of us, we might want to get it done before spring break, just like make sure we have a foundation to move forward, and like, that's cool. I think for some other folks, we might need to marinate on the concepts a little bit and really figure out like, what are these big concepts that I didn't really quite connect together in the moment of the exam, okay? I do want to sort of throw this out here as an option as well. Are there folks who would be interested in meeting during spring break? And I mean this wholly as you should take that week to not do anything. That is 100% in your right. And I know some of you have really tight schedules, and so maybe having something during spring break would be helpful. Okay, cool. So let me put together a schedule then. I will put this on Canvas. There is a calendar option where you can go and then sign up for the appointments, okay? So I have not put that up yet, but I will do that by the end of today. And if none of those times work for you, because I know some of you are taking a bunch of other classes, you're working, you've got other responsibilities, right? If none of those times work, then let's try and figure out something outside of those time slots, okay? But if you look at the times and you're like, none of them work for me, and therefore I can't do test corrections, that is false. It just means the posted times don't work for you, and we should work together to figure out an alternate time, okay? I think in terms of, yeah, there was definitely a spread between the different exam versions. I think for the privacy of the folks, maybe that's not something that I sort of discussed right here. I hope you can respect that. But yeah, there was a little bit of a difference between different groups. Okay. All right, so I'm gonna stop sharing my screen here.